Hello, Magic is Real family. Thank you so much for being here. Today, I have on the podcast with me Kimberly Meredith. I'm very happy to have her here. She's a very accomplished person and an interesting person. And first, I'm going to read her bio to you to give you a little blurb about her, but then I'm going to have Kimberly take the mic and tell us all about her. So, Kimberly Meredith is a world renowned celebrity medical intuitive psychic medium, global speaker, influencer, holistic practitioner, hands on healer, spiritual teacher, and the best selling author of Awakening to the Fifth Dimension, Discovering the Soul's Path to Healing. But she has another book coming out that we'll talk about as well. After two near-death experiences, Kimberly experienced an incredible encounter with God and received miraculous healing gifts from the Holy Spirit. Blessed with a unique array of extraordinary healing and psychic abilities, Kimberly is one of the world's most gifted medical mediumship healers and foremost global speakers. And that is why I'm very honored that she has taken the time to come here for little old us, and just to share her message. So thank you again, Kimberly. I really appreciate your willingness to show up and to be here with us.
Thank you, Shannon, for having me here today.
It's
I'm
a
ha
pleasure.
yeah, I'm happy to be here.
I'm so glad. So I would love to start by talking about you, Kimberly, the person, the human. Anything you'd like to share about your background? And when I ask that, for example, as a child, whatever you're comfortable sharing, did you have a spiritual, what were your spiritual beliefs or lack of spiritual beliefs? Who are you as a human being and what was your life like?
So basically, I was brought up in a two religious backgrounds of Catholicism and Judaism. And also my aunt was very spiritual into Buddhism. So I kind of hopped around a lot and but I really loved Judaism and I was very close to my Jewish grandmother. And I just always loved praying. So as a young child, I always just was just really into prayer. And if I wasn't grabbing my grandpa's yarmulke, putting that on my head, I was always putting a veil on my head. I just always wanted to be in prayer. And I also had unusual abilities, like my eyes were fluttering, blinking, and I was always rubbing my hands together and felt heat in my palms. And I was just naturally, even as young as like maybe like 6 months old, putting my hands on animals and specifically my grandma who had suffered from asthma as a young child. And they had moved from Iowa to the Long Beach area by the ocean. And um, because she was suffering such bad asthma, so she could breathe better. And so I would put my hand on her chest and say, like to try to heal her. And so instinctually, I always kind of knew in my heart that was my thing to do healing. And as I grew up, I just, even as young as like 10 years old, I wanted to work in hospitals. So it was natural for me to go into nursing. So I got my nurse's aide at a young age and started working in hospitals as a nurse assistant.
That's so interesting that as such a young child, you knew that you wanted to be a healer. And I think it's not really that normal that a child of that age would understand what spiritual healing is. But it sounds like it was very innate to you, that you knew that something was happening and it was just instinct to, for example, lay your hands when somebody was having a medical crisis.
Yeah. And when I got my nurse's aide license, before even that, I was a candy striper. And I also worked in admitting, and I was so excited when I became a nurse's aide. I got to work on some of the most difficult floors. And my intention was also always become an RN, but I registered in many nursing courses throughout my life. But I had a lot of family difficulties with my mother who had struggled with alcoholism my whole life, and I always had to pay for most of our income. So I was always going in and out of school to support the family. But I always was so blessed with um, getting a lot of opportunities, which one time, one of my girlfriends, who was a very accomplished actress, had said, "Hey, do you want to come work on one of the really big television shows in Hollywood?" And one of them was it's called Strong Medicine.
Yeah.
And Lori Metcalf was working on that show. And I said, "Why? You wouldn't want me there." I was working at the time at a very beautiful hospital in Santa Monica at the time. And she said, "Well, you could do what's called onset camera medical technical advising, and it's more money than being a nurse aide." At the time, I think I was making like $12 an hour or something.
Wow.
And I said, "Oh," and I was used to hard work my whole life, and I said, "What do I do?" And she's like, "Well, you just walk on and you're going to be doing the same thing you do, setting up IVs and making it look real on set, but you also could say maybe a couple lines here and there." And I said, "Okay, I'll come try it." And so I went for the day, and there's a lot of standing around and all that and everything, but it was very a lot less work. And I was like, wow. And I remember the director really liked me, and he said, "Do you want to do this a couple times a week?" And I said, "All right, I guess." And I remember I really liked it. And then that grew into years of people hiring me on many shows. It went from that show 5 years to Grey's Anatomy, Young and Restless, All My Children. Grey's Anatomy was like 6 years. And then I went to My Sister's Keeper, to Brothers and Sisters, to becoming one of the most well-known medical technical advisors in Hollywood. And then many movies and shows. And but I always kept my nurse's assistant license up, and kept staying. I moved on to UCLA, moved on to Cedar Sinai. I always wanted to keep working as a nurse's aide. I never went on and became a nurse, but sometimes nurses' aides know almost more than nurses. And we, it's a hard job, but I could have given it up and just been a full-time medical technical advisor and stayed in that arena. But I wanted to keep, helping at the hospitals and doing that. And um, why I'm talking about this is because sometimes we get a hit that you're doing a little bit too much. And what happened, I'm getting chills right now from heaven, the guides above, because I was doing a little bit too much. And to circle back to 2011 and 12, I had finally gotten a big break in Hollywood, and I got on a show that was kind of like handed to me, saying, "Oh, you're going to have, um, you know, a writing opportunity, and you're the main. Um, you're going to have like a bigger part in it, and also you're going to be doing the main medical technical director." And at that time, my grandmother, who was very dear to me, was very sick. So I was taking care of her at a nursing home. And I was also still working my nurse assistant job at Cedar Sinai. So I was doing all that, and it was a lot.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's really interesting. Especially I'm an actor too from LA, and so
Yeah.
I was Alyssa Milano stand-in for a while, and so I know the set life very well. And
Yeah.
I think that's so interesting. Oh, I got chills too because I was about to say something, and that I'm not going to talk about me now, but I have shared a lot of my story on this podcast. And I totally, totally understand you have these gifts and you're really good at it, but but then the universe goes, okay, but how are you going to be of service in for humanity on a bigger, I'm a really good actor, but I lost my voice because, and at the time I was like, how can you do this to me at the peak of my career? I can't perform anymore. Now I understand. I was meant to be a spiritual healer. And now they're like, now you can go back to voiceover. But first, this. So I'm really interested to hear what the shift was for you, besides just going, I really want to help people and not just performing as a tech and a consultant. So, do you want to talk about your near-death experience? I know you've had two of them. Is that kind of, unless there's anything in between that I'm missing? So, share
Well,
as you
right,
will.
yeah. So right at that point when I got that show,
Yeah.
um, I was burning the candle at all ends with taking care of my grandmother, got the show with Laurie Metcalf, Niecy Nash, and everything was happening for me. Finally got the big show. Everything was happening, everything was going on. And right at that pivotal moment in my life, I got hit by a car on foot. And when that happened, um, I, lost everything. And it brought me to the light, which meant all the abilities that I had when I was a child, um, which I truly believe that I was a medium and a psychic and an intuitive person, but I pushed it down when I was little. Um, Woke up when I coded. I had been taken to the hospital. Um, I was on the way to the set when I got hit by the car, and I was doing a lot leading up to being hit by the car. I was on the way to the set, and I was spinning my wheel a lot right before that happened, working in the three jobs. And so I got hit by the car. And um when I had the near death experience at the hospital, when they rushed me in, I was barely alive. Um, I felt like when I heard my fiance was bringing me in, I couldn't believe they were rushing me in. I heard them say her kidneys are failing. And as they brought me in, I was going into like this tunnel, and I just felt like a swoosh going through. And as I came in through to the hospital bed, they were hooking me up, and I looked over to the right, and they had like the blood pressure cuff. I saw to the right, I could see him standing in front of me, the blood pressure machine go down, 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 out. And then I went up, and then a light went down on my chest. And when I was little, to backtrack, when I was a baby, I don't know if I mentioned at the beginning, my eyes would flutter.
Yes.
So when that happened, the ball of light just came whoo, onto my chest, and I went up. And I remember, and by the way, this is the same hospital I had worked at. So I'm back there
Crazy.
again.
That's wild.
And then they're all on me. And then I'm hearing in the background um noises, and then I'm just completely out. And when I come back in to the body, my eyes are fluttering the way they were when I was a baby. But I'm for several days not computing what has happened to me until understanding, as I keep being brought into more and more machines, MRIs, and things they're doing to me throughout the next week, that I knew I'd gone to the other side and come back. And I kept saying, I saw God. And they're going, we all see God. But I keep saying, I saw God. I saw God. Now I've realized I can't move my legs. I can't speak the way I've spoken before. I'm sounding different. My eyes are blinking. My fiance is like, your eyes are blinking. I said, I feel the Holy Spirit went through me. What are you saying? I feel God. I feel God. He kept saying, everybody knows God. This is a huge shift that had happened to me. Now, I knew a few days later I was never going to be the same. That life that I had had with the entertainment, the nurse's aide, everything was different. The phone starts ringing. Grandma, she's 95 years old. She's calling for the nursing home. Where are you? Why aren't you here? Why aren't you coming? I'm hardly even like speaking. I can't like communicate really to her. I'm like, I'll come when I can get out. I can't walk. I know like the legs are not functioning. So this is what happened.
Okay, wow. That must be so wild to be in the hospital where you work as a patient in that capacity.
Yes.
Um,
And they're
and
coming down. Some of my friends are coming down and like just staring at me.
hmm, I've heard that before of people ending up working on people that they one of their own. So I'm getting chills again. I just feel so like I have so many. I'm so moved by this because I do think, and I've heard this from many near-death experiencers, a lot of them were already psychic, mediumistic as kids. And not for everyone, but I think so many, I would love to know what you think about why we have these experiences. It seems to me, and I would like to know if you believe this, that, like you said, you were on this path and it was fine, it was good, but you were here for a different purpose and you had shut that down. And so God was saying, all right, hey, wake up. Um, Come back to me. What do you think? Was it intent? Like, was it planned? Was it part of your journey?
Shannon, I literally felt, it makes me sad because I literally felt like I was really going, I had a goal, I had a direction, and I was really over here. And they picked me up. God just like picked me up. And, it was a horrific accident and just put me like over here
Yeah,
and took my life, and I, I died, and when I came back, I'm, I'm a servant of God now, you know, and I loved my life before and I love my life now, but it's a totally different life. And now I would I want to go back to the life I had before? There's a lot of beautiful things about my life before and I miss it, but I love my life now.
that's beautiful. Um, okay, so I want to go to, so I want to talk about your work, and that's what we're getting into. How soon after the accident, and also, how did you, I'm also just curious to know how long it took to recover, and just because I'm curious about you and and how you recovered from this. And I know it must have been very traumatic for you, but also I'd love to know, as you're speaking about that, when did you start to, was it immediate that you're like, oh, I've, feels like you immediately knew your abilities were heightened, but when did the sort of medical medium stuff kind of come into it?
Yeah, so it took about 2.5 years to get out of the wheelchair. And it took me about from 2012, 13, 14, probably about 3 years for me to really start working out in public. Um, my work, my abilities started to gradually start to open up about a year and a half after the accident. I started to communicate with spirit, but I didn't publicly go out to 2015,
Uh,
16, 17, I started going into expos. I got publicly discovered in 17 in front of hundreds of people. So that's, I don't know, I can't count how many years that is, but 2015, I was discovered in my apartment by hundreds of people here. But I didn't get out of my wheelchair. Even 2017, 18, I still was in a wheelchair in and out.
Yeah. When you say you were discovered, what were you doing that was bringing attention to your abilities?
I was in my apartment and some people were coming in here and finding out about me here, doing readings from the apartment. And then they started telling other people in Los Angeles, and I couldn't leave the apartment. I was still in the wheelchair.
Yeah.
They were finding out I was channeling some higher energies like Edgar Casey and some scientists and doctors that come through me. And they were finding out information about people that other doctors and scientists or other facilities were not finding out, like they had cancer and tumors and other kinds of diseases, like the root cause. And
Hmm.
I would find out about it and then tell the people, and then they would go to their doctor and get a scan and say, yes, that's correct. You do have that.
Right. I am curious about this because I'm a psychic medium, right? So, for example, I did a reading yesterday and for one of my mentors, actually, when we were catching up, and his grandmother came through to me. And I said to him, let me just see if I can see how she passed. And I said, it's not dementia. It's not colon cancer. He goes, it's dementia and colon cancer. Don't doubt yourself. And the way I received the information, for me, it was unusual because usually I'll feel it in my body in a weird, like I'll kind of, it doesn't hurt, but I can feel it, energy around that area, or I'll hear it, or I'll hear a word, dementia, or I'll feel dizzy. But yesterday was the first time where I don't know how I knew it. I just knew it. It was claircognizance. So I'm interested to know that when you sit across from somebody, how is it that you perceive what's happening with their body?
Well, I get messages from my spirit team in my left ear because I've had a hit in my head like Edgar Casey did.
Oh, wow.
A
Yeah.
lot of people that have had, different types of abilities awaken in them have different ways that they get messages. Not everybody get messages the same. I'm all the clairs, and I also do speakings with people's relatives that come in. So I'm a medical intuitive, but I'm also clairvoyant, clairaudient, and I'm also psychic. So I get messages from my spirit team in my left ear. I'm partially deaf in the left ear from my accident, but I also get messages from other guides that come in. I blink. My left eye blinks, my right eye blinks sacred codes, soul frequency codes. I also scribble on the paper. So I get all kinds of messages. So I scan people in like 3.5, 4 minutes. I get the messages, I write them on the paper. And then I also get your family that comes in from the other side. So they also want to get in on the reading. So they also come in and do the reading too. And I also like to do nutritional health and wellness plans too. So I do vitamins and such. I do a whole body intake, which is finding not only something that may be going on in you, but the root cause of why it has happened to you. Why did you get this? What's going on? I also like working with Western medicine, Eastern medicine. So I add to what's going on with your doctors. I don't take away from what the doctors are doing. I add. My book, Awakening to the Fifth Dimension, Discovering the Soul's Path to Healing. There's a lot of studies in the back of the book. I've been researched by the biggest research organizations in the world. They put me through a lot of double blind testing. So I feel that being a medical intuitive is really interesting because not everybody can do the same diet, not everybody can take the same vitamins, not everybody can take the same probiotic, probiotic. Not everybody's the same. So everybody has to understand that when you have a reading through a medical intuitive medium, you have to understand that not everybody's going to read you the same. And my
Yep.
guys are very thorough. And so sometimes when they go through the body and they're scanning you, they're going to see something maybe that a mammogram or an x-ray or an ultrasound maybe not picked up. So sometimes if I like in a big room, okay, and I'll go through and I'll look at somebody, I'm very nosy.
Yeah.
I may go through the body and say, "Oh, I see something," my eye will go, "Duh, duh, duh, duh," off. And they'll say, "Well, I just went to the doctor and everything is fine." And I'll say, "Well, I'm seeing something like the blood pressure." And they'll go, "Oh, yeah, I am on blood pressure meds." And I'll say, "Well, I'm seeing that maybe it might need to be a little bit adjusted." And they'll like, "Yeah, I do feel something." So then, and I may say, "Oh, there's something in the gut going on." And they'll say, "Oh, that's interesting. I am taking a probiotic." And I'll say, "Well, they're saying maybe you need to adjust probiotic." "Yeah, I've been on it for like 7 months and I'm still not feeling good. I'm still feeling a little off with my GI tract." So that means to stay open. Maybe you need to switch to probiotic because not all probiotics are working for
Yeah.
people and they need to be shifted. And maybe your diet needs to be looked at.
I love that you incorporate the two things that are my passions. If I hadn't become an actor, I probably would have ended up in the medical field. I'm a Virgo. I am fascinated by medical stuff. I know a lot about it, which helps me too in my readings because I know a lot of obscure things. I actually said to someone, "Do you have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome?" And she was like, "Yes." How did you know that? I'm like, "It's because I'm interested."
And here's another thing, Shannon, that I don't really believe in the words of diagnosis. I believe in the words of energy. So when people
Mm.
come to me and say, "I have this," my guides often say, "No, you have maybe the wrong water. Maybe you need to get a filter on your shower head because the energy from the water is causing you to feel your immune system is too
Oh
low."
yeah.
So people are still drinking refrigerator water. People are still drinking out of their tap water and their animals. So I like to look at things as energy instead of the diagnosis of what they're telling people and look at it into a dimensional frequency because our food and our water can either be third dimensional frequency or a fifth dimensional frequency.
That's so important, and I believe in Western medicine because there are things that just need to be treated that way. But I also really value my functional medicine holistic practitioner who sat with me for an hour, covered by insurance, an hour, saying, "Okay, but why? Okay, but why? Why do you have SIBO? Where is this coming from?"
The
Um,
root cause.
Exactly, and she was the one I had in LA is fantastic, and she really did a lot of deep digging, and when something didn't work, "All right, let's go deeper. Is it the MTHFR mutation that you have? Is it D let's check your DNA. Let's get to why this is happening and how are you living day to day? What's your stress level? Are you exercising? Are you getting it?" She actually prescribed laying in the sun a little bit to get more vitamin D. So it's like Western medicine is has its place, but it's also very much it's about let's see your symptoms. This means you have this, and this means this is the drug you need to take. And a holistic view, like you said, is let's look at the environment. Let's look at your cellular structure. Let's look at the energy. And I was very sick when I was in a bad relationship.
You, yes. And very spot on. Also, let's look at your fiber. Let's
Yeah.
look at everybody eating one Granny Smith green apple a day and understanding our fiber is so important in our body and the stress. Yes, we cut down on our stress. Oh, how many diseases would be cut back in our lives doing that extra meditation prayer every day. And it doesn't have to be an hour, it could be 90 seconds in the morning of good thoughts in the morning and a good thought in the evening, cuts back all the negative thoughts throughout the day. It really does help. And and exercise, it doesn't have to be an hour, it could be just 20 minutes a day. And in my book, I have a lot of great tips about good brain health, good gut health. And it's really, really important to understand we live in this higher dimensional fifth dimension. We cut back the fear, the worry, the negative thought process. It activates a spiritual boosting health inside of the body. So we cut back on raising our cholesterol. When you raise your cholesterol, a lot of people think it's just about eating. It's about the negative thought process, the worry and the fear. You could be doing all these great things I'm talking about, but if you're sitting at home and worrying after you exercise and eat good and take your vitamins and you're still worrying, you're raising your cholesterol still. So
Yes.
using your body to get into fear mode, and then you can still get sick and you can still gain weight. So you want to cut back on plastics also. You don't want to drink out of plastic. You want to drink out of good glass or a good source of container that doesn't have plastic in it, because that also can hurt your body. So it's really, really important to think about the relationships that you have, people that are calming and gentle and kind. And like, look what was happening to me before I had my NDE. I was happy, I was successful, I was going in that direction I wanted so bad, but I was spinning fast. I was in a third dimensional spin out, and I was running, towards something that I thought was so important for me. I loved that world, but God took me out of that world. I always was very faithful to the energy of God and Holy Spirit. And I loved helping, my grandma, but I wasn't being true to who I really was because I was teased, I was bullied as a child because of the blinking, and I pushed it away. And then God took me, took me out, and brought me back to who I am now, which is this healer and this medium who I am now. But um, who you really are is what I'm saying is important to be your authentic self.
Amen, and I'm cheersing to that with my plastic bottle of alkaline water that I'm drinking
You need to
to
get that
keep.
in a glass.
Yes, I did, yes, but you're right, and I think stress is so important to address because I was from birth, I was a selective mute and had to be in therapy at age 2 because my anxiety, I'm being a highly sensitive person, my doctor said, "Poor Shannon, she has so many big feelings she doesn't know what to do with," so I would shut down because I felt everything. And instead of a normal 2-year-old that was like self-centered, I said to my mom, I'm so worried about dad because about whatever I called him, daddy or whatever. I said, we have each other. I said, you and me and Allie, my little sister. And I said, or when I was 3, maybe I said this. And I said, but when daddy's traveling, he doesn't have anyone. And I was always worrying about other people to the point of being paralyzed. And then that led into years of addiction, years of not feeling safe in the world and being sick all the time. I had gallbladder removed. I had, digestive issues. I have migraines, but it would get worse at those times, and I was going to doctors I was 25 and, like, doubled over in pain and having dizziness and fainting and all kinds of things, and now I can see that that was all inflammation from stress in itself, and I knew that, but I didn't know how to fix it, and gratefully, in middle age, I finally kind of figured out what I need: anti-anxiety meds, meditation, yoga, uh, spiritual practice, faith, and I'm good. 12-step, all the things. But I'm glad that you touched on that because so many illnesses, and that's not to blame anyone for their illnesses, but so
Ever.
many illnesses stem from stress. And if you can get that thing under control, even if it's something that's not curable, you can find such relief in your symptoms.
Yeah, and also really a great thing that you're saying is like own who you are and own that if you are a sensitive, if you are an empath, if you like to help people, which I am one and you are one,
Yeah.
a number 4, I call it, a person that came to the world as a 4, a person that is an angelic light worker, a person that likes to help people and serve, which is wonderful because right now we're moving into the awakening, the great awakening. Understand that you can help and serve. And when you're helping and serving, it actually helps you heal. It boosts your energy. But having boundaries and knowing when to say no, knowing when you need to take care of yourself. And it's okay to say, I can't do this right now. I need to take care of myself, but I can come back when I feel better.
Yeah, exactly. Boundaries, huge. That's something I had to learn. I'm still working on it. I'm getting better and better. But I was always people pleasing, always giving, always sacrificing myself. I still do that by nature. I want to give, I want to love. And I've told someone recently, I said, I know that you don't have the capacity to give in the way that I give, but I'm still going to keep giving because that's just who I am. And I won't, it's not a tit for tat. It's not you owe me because I gave you. I just organically love you. No strings attached. love for free. And that's just the kind of person that I am. But you do have to also make sure people aren't taking advantage of that energy, draining that energy, taking that energy. So thank you for touching on that. I would also love to know, I know what it is for me, but when you are going through your day, going through your world, speaking of boundaries, you having to protect your own energy, when you're interacting with others, do you kind of, your abilities are very natural and very, you, you've always had them. So when you see people, do you immediately go, oh, I see something there, or do you have to turn that on like I do? And not always, but a lot of the time I turn it off. It sometimes comes to me out of the when I'm just out in public, but for the most part, I live a pretty normal. I'm not always channeling spirit, and I know you're not either, but how does that work for you?
I'd say because I'm a trance channeler, which people can look that up. Um, I'm pretty tuned in all the time.
Yeah.
Ed Casey was a sleeping prophet, and I'm a awake trance channeler. So it's pretty much always on. I don't have to go into something. I'm pretty much always trancing. So I can turn it on pretty quickly and start channeling. I have it accessible to me quickly,
Yeah.
so it's not hard for me to start. And I do a lot of teachings. I am now teaching mediumship. I have an
Oh,
ongoing
great.
mediumship class now to start
Oh,
helping people learn how to teach. And because I came from a background of teaching with the entertainment classes and stuff, that they're starting to be really full right now. So people are like learning, and my guides like teaching. I really feel this is the time that people are going to awaken quicker to their abilities. I feel I've been watching some of my students and they are catching on pretty fast. So it's learning that if we're open and we don't have the fear of learning and we are ready to receive. So when I had my NDE and they came to me, the guides, and they were speaking to me in the left ear, and I heard the whisper, I could have said no and was afraid, right? But I said yes to it. So that's when they all came about and started speaking to me. And then as I was gliding my hands and the eyes were blinking yes and no, and I started learning the scanning my technique of the medical intuitive energies, then they started developing with me and I was learning from the guides. I never took a class, but they were teaching me. um, the more I would say yes to it, the more they wanted to work. So what happens with spirit and the angels, the more you're not afraid, the more you're in the fifth dimension and not the 3D world, the more they want to be with you. They love the laughter. They love you being more childlike. They like you to be happy. The more they're ready to teach you. So this is really a gift they're giving us. So they're saying that the more you can learn to be like this, the more they're going to teach us. So
that
it's
makes sense.
very exciting. Yes. And so the more that we're truthful, honest, open, like you said, the more you're being authentic and open, like you said, I'm open, I'm authentic, I'm doing my program, I'm who I am, I want to be healed. The more our guides and our angels, the other side, the afterlife, want to come in and help us learn, and they'll heal us faster, they'll communicate with us more. A lot of people come to me and say, my mother crossed over, my dad, what kind of message do you have, or how can I be healed quicker? I say, just have no fear, just be open, and the guides will come in and start speaking to you. Your mom and dad will come in and start helping you. And I am a conduit for that. I do that, and I am a messenger. I'm the in-betweener. I'm the in-between channel.
Yeah. I call myself a spirit translator because
Yeah,
it's just all I'm doing is taking very subtle energies and trying to make sense of them. But I always tell my clients, we're all mediums. The only difference between you and me is that I'm trained to learn the language of spirit. And it's so subtle. And that's why it takes, for a lot of people like me, it takes a little more work than it does maybe for you naturally. But as you said, once it clicks, my
exactly.
first workshop with Medium Fleur, and I was like
Oh, yeah. I
Yeah,
know
I
her.
figured you know her. She's amazing. And I figured I went in there going, "Oh, I'm going to be the worst in the class. I don't know what I'm doing."
Yeah,
First workshop, I was in there, and so was everyone else. She had us in there doing it, showing us you're all doing it. It's
yeah.
just tuning in. And some people have it stronger than others. Some people are less sensitive neurologically. So, what is it that you most want people to know generally?
No, I feel that everyone deserves a miracle. Everyone deserves a miracle healing in this life. And everyone needs to know, Shannon, that we never die. We are infinite beings. We can keep growing and learning to raise our consciousness. This is exciting because we have the chance every day to get up in the morning and thank God that we're alive. And we have a day to work on our consciousness and raise it to help other human beings here, our brothers and sisters. If you see somebody at the grocery store who doesn't have enough money, give them some money, help them, or help them to the car. Help them if they can't, pick up something or do something, or whenever you need anybody needs a helping hand, help somebody out. Smile, say thank you, do something for somebody else. And you know what? Sometimes when you're so kind, people think that you are doing something for something wrong, but you're not. That's the thing. The more that we keep showing gratitude and grateful, and being grateful and kindness, then people think, oh, this is just real human kindness. This is important that we come from our heart. Coming from our heart is going to raise our global consciousness. This is important. When I was a little girl, my mom died young. And I told my grandmother there was a little bit of a thing going on. They wanted my mom to be buried at the Jewish cemetery, but my Italian grandmother wanted the cross on her stone. And I wanted the infinity sign. And they said, what? What is that? I said, that means she's going to come back. And they didn't understand, right? But now I see the infinity sign. You know what that is, right?
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
a loop, a figure eight
Yeah.
connecting. There's
Okay.
no end, there's no
There's
beginning.
no end. So when I'm doing readings or I'm at big events, I'll see that sign show up over certain people. And that will
Oh,
say, that
wow.
will mean my mom's coming in over me. And I'll see people on the left side of their shoulder. I'll say right away, when I see them, I'll say, oh, your mom's trying to come in, or your relatives coming in, because that's the sign that their relatives are coming back in to communicate. And they'll say, yeah, my mom just passed, or my dad just passed. So that means my mom is telling me, Kimberly, we never die. We're infinite beings. And that means so much to me because my mom had a hard life. And when I was little, for me to say to my grandmas and them, that needs to be on her stone, and she's back.
Ah,
And we are never passing. We are all infinite beings here. We all are special, and we are all here for a purpose.
I love that so much. Now, I mean, I could literally do a podcast episode about each facet of what we've talked about. But I do want, and so thank you for sharing what you have. I thought of more questions, but we'll leave it here for now. And I just want you to be able to share about your new book, classes, workshops. I know there's a list on your website, so you don't have to list them, but kind of tell us what you're excited about and where we can find you and how we can work with you.
Thank you. So my website's called thehealingtrilogy.com. And I do a once a month divine feminine nonprofit healing co-healing event. We have one this Saturday where we come together as women and men and we pray for everybody. It's once a month on Saturdays. It's nonprofit, so you just donate,
Lovely.
or you can come in free if you want. And we all get together and we do like a co-healing prayer circle once a month on Saturday. We're doing this for about 7 years. It's really
It's
fun. And then we have
beautiful.
a list of, thank you. We have a list of events that go on throughout we have like a Rise and Thrive Malibu retreat coming up in November. And then we have a mediumship classes and other classes there. And then I have my book called The Awakening to the Fifth Dimension, Discovering the Soul's Path to Healing. And that's on Amazon. It's also a Hay House book and published by Hay House. And it also is a audio book by Penguin Random House. And that can just be picked up on my website or on Amazon. And what else? My next book I'm working on right now is about our soul frequency. And I'm working on that right now. And I also offer soul frequency readings. So if you're
So
interested
cool.
in those and medical intuitive readings, they're on my website.
Awesome. Can you just talk a little bit for a second about what that means? Like, if I want to get a soul frequency reading, what will you tell me? What kind of information will I receive?
Yeah, those are really, really fun. So soul frequency readings are you come on and I tap into you or a loved one you're dating, or maybe a family member, or just you and your work or anything happening in your life. And I take a deep breath, you take a deep breath, and we go into a line of frequency numbers. And the numbers will tap into a very detailed history of where you're going to the next 10 years.
Oh,
And I've
exciting.
been doing this around, God, I've been doing this in New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco at the expos, and they're very detailed and they'll be like,
I'm going to get one. I'm going to sign up for this. Like,
yeah,
sign me up. So
yeah.
I
So
will definitely.
they're like kind of like Greg Braden had spoke about the
Yeah.
LP frequency numbers.
Yeah.
My guide started downloading these to me the last 3 years.
So cool. Sign me up for one of each. That's so great. Kimberly Meredith, thank you so very much for taking the time out of your day and your life to share, even though you've shared so many times. I really appreciate that you continue to share, because there may be people that haven't heard your story, or there may be people that have but haven't heard what you shared today. So just being of service in that way means a lot to me, and I know it means a lot to everyone else. So I'm really excited to have met you, and thank you so much for just being you, your beautiful soul.
Thank you, Shannon. I'm super grateful for meeting you, and my spirit team is super grateful for being on here and super grateful for being able to share to all your audience. So thank you so much for having me.
Perfect. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. Let's see how I stop this time. That was beautiful.